Hi, I'm Peggy Farron, and this is the Understand Photography Show, where we talk about travel, nature, and fine art photography. Welcome to episode number 55. My guest today is Joe Fitzpatrick.
Hi, everybody.
And if you're wondering why Joe has been the guest for the last few shows, as you know, Joe is the producer of this show, and he is our lead instructor here at Understand Photography. Joe is a walking encyclopedia when it comes to photography. He just knows everything. Well, here in Naples, Florida, we had a hurricane named Irma, and I still don't have any electricity at my house. So our guests are being rescheduled. Joe said not to say we lost our guests like they died.
Swept out in the
They're
tide.
all okay. It's just that we had to do some juggling because a lot of us don't have electricity, and it's a big mess here in Naples, Florida. We were lucky the last two shows we did at our friend Marcel Semplis' office at Avenue 5 International Realty. So if you need a house or you want to list your house in Naples, Florida, talk to Avenue 5, because they basically took us in as refugees.
Yeah.
I worked there every day. I got so much work done I couldn't work otherwise because I have had no power. We just got power here at the studio yesterday, late in the afternoon, so we're good to go.
Really not up all the way, so we're just one
we
camera
don't have
setup.
internet or anything like that yet. Nothing fancy like that.
No, so we're in a single camera setup, and keeping our fingers crossed that it's all working.
So the reason that we are recording this episode instead of live is, can you believe it? I am taking another European trip. I will be in Ireland for 2.5 weeks, so we will resume live again on October 6th, and my guest is Reg Garner from Orlando. He is an amazing, mostly landscape photographer, I would say.
Yeah.
But he's also going to talk a lot about how he has made a name for himself, because I've watched it. I met him several years ago at a convention, a photography convention, and I've watched him grow. He's an amazing photographer. So let's go on to the show. So this is part 2 of Common Questions. Part 1 is episode 54, and it's on our website, or hopefully it will be by the time you watch this, at understandphotography.com. Just click on the Understand Photography show, and you'll see the show notes to all of our past episodes. So we get a lot of questions, mostly via our Facebook group, which is facebook.com/groups/understandphotography. So if you have questions, please feel free to ask on our, join our Facebook group, and then I have a little problem. My clicker just went out. Anyway, if you have any questions, just ask on the Facebook group. Join, and we will do the best we can to answer. And not just us, but other photographers as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a lot of people that keep an eye on our Facebook page, our group page, so you'll get good information. Reg, every once in a while, gets on there and gives some answers, as well as a lot of other photographers that you'll find.
John Francis, who's
John
amazing.
Francis is
he's
great.
like he's a techie.
Yeah, John has a lot of good information.
And he's a lighting guru.
Yeah.
I got to have him on the show for lighting.
Yeah, he's great at lighting.
So, well, I'm just going to go with these. I'm just going to go with the questions that are up there because this thing isn't working, but we're okay. So, Joe, I've got a couple of questions. First one is about landscape photography.
Okay.
All right, landscape photography. Somebody asked, actually several people have asked, what focal length is best for landscape photography?
All of them. Really? I mean, most people seem to think that, landscape, it's got to be a wide angle lens, something like a full frame equivalent of a 24 millimeter or 17 millimeter, because they want to get this super wide shot and get this entire vista in. But sometimes you want to compress distance. It's much more interesting.
Can I just stop you?
Yeah.
Because I made that mistake recently, as you know.
Yeah.
Keep going.
I did to a certain extent too. Sometimes you want to compress distance. In the Smokies, it's great for when you want to get the mountains stacked up. I was recently in the Palouse, and I took the longest lens I had with me was 400 millimeter. And I was wishing I brought my 600 millimeter.
Really?
Really. I had the 400, and I wished I'd had the 6, because a lot of the landscapes really lent themselves to compressing distance.
Wow.
And stacking it up that way. So sometimes you want a real wide angle lens to get a terrific vista, but other times the lens to use is something on a extreme telephoto something, and everywhere in between.
Well,
so,
my mistake is I brought the wide lenses to Italy, and then I hired a professional photographer, Stefano. I was pronouncing his name wrong. In fact, I put a recommendation on him somewhere, but I'll put his information in the show notes. He was really good. Anyway, I got there with my wide-angle lenses, and he was like, you need a long lens, because Tuscany is like the Palouse with the big rolling hills, and to compress that makes it look so much more powerful.
Yeah, that's much more impact with that.
He was awesome, because he just let me use his camera.
Okay.
He had a Sony, so I couldn't switch lenses with him, but he just put my card in his camera and let me use his camera so that I could get some good shots. And someday I'll actually process them. I got back from Italy, and I worked the weekend and then got ready for a hurricane. And I mean,
we've been crazy with the hurricane. I mean, this has just been nonstop, this and that. I got stuff all over the place. I finally found my AA charger last night, you know. So that's why we actually have we have volume today, because I was running out of batteries for the mics.
Yeah.
I didn't have it.
I couldn't help because I have no electricity.
Yeah, I
he
had
has
charged
electricity.
the ton. I had charged the ton before we made our escape from Southwest Florida. And then we were going through them, and I couldn't find my chargers. You know, I had safely packed them away.
Mine are still safely packed away, and I don't know where they are. And I leave for Ireland tomorrow. So, all right, so let's just talk about that a little bit more, because now here in the Everglades, it'd be the opposite, right?
Yeah.
We're all flat.
Yeah.
We want a wide-angle lens here.
When I'm shooting the Everglades, usually I'm shooting with a wide-angle lens, because
and when you say wide-angle, how wide do you say?
I'm looking at the equivalent of a 24-millimeter lens or a 17-millimeter lens on a full-frame equivalent.
Okay.
Okay, so if you have a full-frame camera, maybe you're using a 24-105 or a 24-millimeter fixed lens, or maybe a 17, something like that.
Okay.
So if you're talking a crop body camera, which a lot of our listeners have, a 10 to 20 or something like that covers the wide angle, or 17 to 50 or 17 to 85. If you're using the kit lens, the wide end of your kit lens is great for capturing wide vistas.
And a kit lens is 18 to 55 generally.
Yeah, they're usually about 18 to 55. 18
on
to
a crop frame camera,
on a crop frame camera, right. Full frame, you're talking 24 to 70, 24 to 105.
Yeah, because if you put a 10 millimeter on a full frame, you're going to get distortion.
Then you're getting distortion. And 17, a really good 17, you don't get a lot of distortion, but after that, even the best corrected, it starts to get a little funky looking.
So
it depends on the look you want. There's nothing wrong if that's the look you want, but if you want I guess a realistic look, 24 there's no issue with. 17, sometimes there is.
Okay.
So in the Everglades, really, it's pretty flat.
Yes.
I mean, it's
very flat.
It's very flat.
We don't have any hills in Florida. Actually, in North Florida, we have hills.
Well, if you see a hill down here, it's a landfill.
Yeah.
You know, anything over 8 foot off the ground, that's a landfill. You know. So down here, you're looking at the what we call the river of grass. You have all the grass out there, but what makes the shot is the clouds. We have the most fantastic clouds in Southwest Florida, especially during the summer. We get these thunderheads and we get these other clouds, and it's just magnificent. So what you're really shooting is the landscape is maybe the bottom third of your shot, and the rest is these fantastic clouds. And you have a structure in there, or you have some water in there, or something like that. So you're really trying to capture the clouds. And for that, you want a wide lens. You're not trying to compress into just one cloud. You're trying to get a lot of them. So for that kind of shot, the wide angle is great.
So rule of thumb for landscapes would be, if you're photographing a flat area, wide angle lens. If you're photographing...
Or mountain range, you know, where you're trying to get the whole range in, let's say.
You'd want a wide lens.
Yeah, yeah.
But if you're in a hilly area, it's probably better to have a long lens.
Yes.
At least 200 millimeters.
Yeah, at least, yeah.
Okay.
If you have the rolling hills and you're trying to compress them, or you're up in the Smokies where you have like a mountain range and back of a mountain range and back of a mountain range, and you're trying to get that compression to get them closer, that's where you'd want that 200 or 300 or whatever you happen to have.
Now for cityscapes, you're back to a wide lens, right?
Yes.
Actually, when I went to Paris, I had my Lumix,
Yeah.
and I had a crop frame camera with an 18 to 55, and I did not. I felt like it wasn't wide enough.
Yeah, if you're in the city, especially a big city, a major metropolis, you're looking at the wider the better. Just to get, because the streets are narrow, especially in the older cities, the streets are narrow, so you're trying for wide angle lenses. There is one place where I think maybe a long lens would look pretty cool, and that's if you have a skyline with a lot of really tall buildings, a major city, Chicago, New York, something like that, and you're up high enough where you're shooting them straight on, and you can compress all those buildings close to each other. That might make for an interesting shot, but that's only one specific type of shot in a cityscape. For most cityscapes, probably a wide angle lens is going to do you the most good. For the most, it depends on your shooting style too,
You just made me think of that shot that I've never been to where they take this, but somewhere up in the hills they take a picture of Los Angeles. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, yeah.
You see it in the movies all the
Yeah,
time. In fact,
yeah.
that latest movie where they were singing and dancing, La La Land.
Yeah.
They were up there where they see the view of Los Angeles. That would be a good
Yeah,
shot for
that
a
would be
long
good to
lens. That's a
compress
good
that in there.
example.
Yeah.
So, other than that, I don't know. But all right, what about lenses for weddings? Now, I actually wrote an article about this, and it's on the understandphotography.com site. If you want to search our site, there's not a search bar, but you can search actually any site now. You just type in the address bar, not the search area, but the address bar up at the top, understandphotography.com, and then leave a space, and then put your search term. So if you do understandphotography.com space wedding, you'll see the different articles that I've written about wedding. Not just me, Tom Tracy's written about weddings. I've had other people.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of stuff about weddings.
Yeah.
But for me, my opinion on weddings is you should always have two cameras hanging off of you.
Right.
And you should have one wide, one long.
That's what I used to do.
Really?
When I had it, yeah. But back then, my wide lens was a 35 to 70.
Okay.
And then my long one was a...
and this is back because everything was full frame.
This is way back. Yeah, this is on a full frame. My wide was a 35 to 70. And my other one was I think it was an 80 to 210 or something like that. The one was maybe a 3.5, I think, on the 35 to 70 constant aperture. And the other one was a 2.8, or it was fairly fast along, because I used to do a lot of candidates, and this is back when everybody was doing frozen portraits, and I did candidates with the 80 to 200 or 210, whatever it was. But the 35 to 70, there was a lot of times that I was reaching for my 24 or something like that, because it wasn't quite wide enough. When you're inside doing group shots, up north we have winter.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we have winter. So, generally they don't like you to do the group shots in 3 feet of snow, so you have to go indoors. And a lot of times the spaces you have indoors are fairly tight. So you can't get far enough back to use like the 35 I had. So a lot of times I had a 24 I would use for that. But the 35 to 70, most of the time, that was a great range.
Yeah.
That was a terrific little lens. That was one of the first lenses that was actually decent zoom, but it had decent quality where you could actually use it for professionally.
Yeah, because now the zooms are pretty good.
Yeah, well, this was an exception to the rule back then. It was a big exception to it.
My recommendation is almost exactly what you said, and of course my recommendation was based on a million other people recommending to me.
Yeah.
But 24 to 70 on the full frame camera, to f2.8. Both Nikon and Canon make that lens, so it's an expensive lens, but I bought mine in 2001, I believe, and I'm still using it as my primary lens.
Yeah.
And then the 70 to 200 2.8.
Yeah.
Now I have since switched to a 70 to 300 f4, just because it's the 2.8 is so heavy that I'm getting old. Okay.
Well, unless you need the 2.8 for a nicer bokeh.
Well, the reason
know,
you need the 2.8 is because you're in, when you're doing the portraits and everything outside, that's fine. But when you go inside the dark room at night, it's easier to focus with the f2.8.
Yes. Yeah. It's quicker
a faster
to
focus.
It's a better focus.
So it's definitely a better lens for wedding photographers.
Yeah.
It's just that as I got older, it got too heavy. If you're young, you should have it, or strong.
It's the same for a photojournalist. I mean, forever, from when I got in it, in a photojournalist bag, you had the 24 to 70 2.8, and you had the 70 to 200 2.8. That was your go-to lenses.
Same as weddings.
That was, well, it's kind of the same thing, but a photojournalist that was going out on an assignment, I don't care what the assignment was. I'm not talking sports where that's specific and you got a longer lens, but general photojournalism, you had a 24 to 70 to 70 to 200 2.8. They were your go-to lenses. That's why all the major manufacturers have them in a pro-quality lenses, because they're the lenses, we're talking full frame here, they're the lenses that you needed.
Yeah.
They were your go-to lenses.
Yeah. Well, they're good. All right, so I'm going to go to some more questions. When should I use a lens hood?
All the time.
I agree.
It is the best protection you can have for your lens. Okay. It keeps you accidentally touching it with fingerprints. It keeps things from blocking it. If the front of the lens gets banged, the cheap lens hood is taking the brunt of it.
That's what happens to me, because especially if I'm doing a wedding, I got those two cameras hanging off me, and I'm rushing between tables and things.
Banging around.
Banging those lenses into everything.
And beating them up. But I always have a lens hood on for protection of the camera.
But that's not the actual use of the lens.
That isn't the actual use, but that's the go-to use that I have.
But I agree. That's why I use it all the time.
So that's why I say all the time. The reason it's designed what it's there for is to keep glare or prevent lens flare. If the sunlight or some light happens to hit the lens element, you get flare. So it degrades your image. You lose contrast and saturation. And of course, if it's extreme, you have the actual sun shining into the lens, and then you get all kinds of messed up. But even if it's off to the side a little bit, you're not aware of it, but it's degrading your image because you're losing saturation due to flare. So by putting the hood on, and you want a hood designed for the specific lens. You don't want a universal hood, because a universal hood is either not going to cover enough or it's going to be vignetting. Very rarely is a universal hood going to be the ideal one.
Okay.
That's why even if you notice with the wide-angle lenses, they have the tulip hoods. They're not circular, they go in and out. They're cut out just so they're just outside of vignetting the lens. So they're specific for it.
Okay.
So you should always get that. You can get the lens hood from the manufacturer and pay a lot of money for it. Okay, and they're great. I mean, it's a nice solid piece of plastic.
And it stays on.
And it stays on. And most of the better ones have some kind of anti-reflective coating on the inside, some kind of flocking or something to keep light from reflecting off the black plastic.
I did not know that.
I say most, but not all of them. And then you can buy the third-party ones, and you can go on Amazon or you can go on eBay and you can buy the other ones, and they're very cheap. Some of them fit better than others. But when
That's what I found. I bought a cheap one and it just didn't stay on.
I have about half and half. Some of the cheap ones fit fine. Some of them don't. Some have some kind of coating inside and some don't. But you're looking at a lens hood that costs $3 or $4 instead of $30 or $40.
Yeah, you can buy 2 or 3 and just try different brands.
Or you get a couple, and if one fits tight and the other ones don't, then you send the other ones back.
Yeah.
Or for that kind of money, it's costs you more to send them back than that.
So now if I'm getting vignetting and I'm using the lens hood that came with the lens, what's the problem?
You don't have it on all the way.
I don't have it on correctly. I've done that too.
Well, we all have, and sometimes you got to watch it, especially like you say, if you're in close quarters and your lens is getting banged and all that, and maybe it's worn from use, taking it off and on, and it's not quite tight, and it bumps and it winds up being cocked just a little bit. And then you see the little corners, yeah. And sometimes you don't notice the corners because you're not doing border patrol like you're supposed to. And then you get home and you got all these dark areas in the two corners.
Unfortunately.
Never happened to me, of course. This is just hearsay.
Boy, it's happened to me too many times.
Yeah. Well, if you believe that, I got a bridge I can sell you too.
Now, but can't you just get a UV filter to protect your lens? That's a big controversy. Let's have that controversy.
Well, okay, let's have that controversy. UV filters were designed to cut out UV light because film was sensitive to UV light.
Oh, but we don't use film.
Right. So you don't need a UV filter
for
its original purpose.
Okay.
So now they sell them to protect your lens. So yeah, they're keeping the front element of your lens from getting hit because you're not putting another piece of glass in front of the front element that'll get hit first. Okay? Some people swear by them. You know, it's like, to me, it's like putting plastic slipcovers on furniture. Anyway, do they still do that? I mean, that used to be a big thing. They
I remember
put
that.
plastic covers on everything. I don't know, fortunately, you know. But this piece of glass, and most of the ones, like when you get them as part of a package, you know, from the camera store.
Oh, yeah.
They're so cheap. And here you have the lens quality, the quality of your lens, and then you have this cheap piece of glass you're putting in front of it that's going to cause reflections and desaturate and everything else. So you're cutting down on the quality of the image that can get back to the sensor. The amount of protection they give, sometimes they might protect it, but other times I've seen them where in a hard hit, all that cheap glass has been driven in to the good glass in back of it and cause damage that way.
Wow.
Would it happen to the other lens? I don't know, but I mean, to me, if you have the lens hood on there, it can't get back there to hit anything. So there's no reason to have the UV filter on unless you're very high altitude photography, and then maybe your sensor in a digital camera would do it. But my understanding is the sensors in digital cameras pretty much aren't sensitive to UV at all.
Okay.
Okay, so,
all right,
the other time I would put some kind of filter on in front of the lens, and it could be UV or a clear nothing filter. When I would go to St. Martin and I'd photograph the planes landing at Princess Juliana.
Oh, with all the sand being
They come in over the beach, and if you're standing on the beach to shoot up as the plane comes over your head, as soon as it passes that jet blast, you're in a sandstorm.
Yeah.
So you immediately close your eyes if you don't have goggles on, but that stuff's hitting the camera all over. So in a situation like that where I might have sand going to hit it, or maybe salt water going to hit the front, I might want to protect the front element with something like that. But in that case, I have a good quality UV filter. You know, you want something by a good brand, and that's going to be expensive. It's going to be 50, 60, 70 bucks or more.
Okay.
You know, maybe even 100 if it's a larger size lens. But you want the equivalent quality of whatever lens you have in back.
Right.
If you got a nifty 50, then you put a $1 filter in front of it. But I mean, you know, but if you have some kind of Zeiss lens that costs you $2,000, then you want a decent thing in front of it.
Yeah.
You know.
Boy, I hope St. Martin got hit way worse than we did.
Oh, terrible. I feel
can't even imagine.
I feel so bad for my friends down there. They supposed to have had 90% destruction. I haven't been able to hear it from anybody down there. I mean, they don't have anything. It's just a mess.
Yeah, they got creamed. Oh, all right, I'm getting depressing. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about filters, because you are a big proponent of polarizing filter.
Exactly.
CPL, as you call it.
Yeah, CPL, circular polarizer.
Lens.
I don't know.
What's the L?
I think it's just they have polarizer, they're getting the L in there. I don't know, you know.
We'll have to look that one up. CPL.
Yeah, but it's not a lens, so.
It goes on your lens.
Yeah, I guess. Well, I always thought it just there for circular polarizer. You know.
We'll have to look that one up. CPL, circular polarizer.
Okay, so
right,
that's
filter.
why a filter, whatever.
Should be
yeah, because it's a
CPF.
because it's a filter. Okay.
So you screw that onto the front of your lens.
You screw that on your front of your lens. It's actually two pieces. Once you've screwed it on, you can rotate it because the front element will turn, and as you turn it, it blocks light ray. Light comes off, reflected off of stuff, polarized. The wavelengths are all in one direction, and as you turn it, you can eliminate glare and flare from the object. You might have a pair of polarized sunglasses at home, and you put them on and you can see into the water, you know, the reflections aren't there, or the sky turns out a lot bluer. It's the same thing.
Okay.
And you put it on, and as you can observe the effect as you turn it. Okay, because you have to turn it to the spot where it's most effective depending on where the light rays are coming from.
Right, because I know when I was in Tuscany, I put the polarizer lens on the front of my camera, and most of the time it didn't make any difference at all. You couldn't even, when you turn it, you couldn't even see a difference.
The closer the sun is to the same angle as the lens, the less effective. When it's at a 90-degree angle, it's very effective. But you can look in there and you can see it, and you can also, let's say you're trying to get the reflection off the water, but you don't want all the reflection off, you just want a lot of it. So you look in your viewfinder and you turn the circular polarizer, and 180 degrees, half a turn, is going to go from all or nothing, or somewhere in between there, okay? And then
So
you're
just looking through your camera, you turn the viewfinder, the circular polarizer lens until you get the effect you want.
Exactly. And then there you go.
And then the big thing you have to remember is when you go from horizontal to portrait mode, you have to turn it again. I always forget. I'm like,
well, you know, and the easy thing there is you have to, if you just turn it 90 degrees from wherever it was, you're back where you were. You don't have to mess with it. Just grab the side of it and just switch it to the bottom, or 90 degrees will go from all to nothing there.
Now the big thing though, because we have a lot of, you know, we teach a lot of beginners, you have to remember to take it off, because so many times I'm teaching my beginner class and I know what the settings are at this point. I've been teaching that class for so long, the shoot and manual class, and if we're in the studio, it's like everybody's at f4 at 100th of a second, and then somebody will say, well, I'm at a 10th of a second or something. I'm like, and I look, and sure enough, they've got their lens. Right. They've got a filter over their lens, because it makes things darker. It takes, how much does it take?
2 stops.
2 full stops.
If it's a maximum effect.
Are they all the same like that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's roughly 2 stops.
That's a lot of light.
That's a lot of light. So sometimes you can't afford that. But when you're doing landscapes or something like that, well, you can always put the camera on a tripod for that.
And you can slow your shutter speed down.
And it's big on a landscape. Because that, not just with water where you have the reflections from that, but also you get all that shine and glare off of leaves, especially the waxy kind of leaves. You get all those specular highlights off them. Well, you turn the circular polarizer and boom, all of a sudden you have this beautiful saturated green without all those annoying reflections. So it's great.
Now, would that work on portrait photography? If you're having hot spots on somebody, would it make any difference?
It might.
I've never tried it. I'm just curious.
I mean, it might. I mean, it depends on the light. You know, the best thing I could do is say try it and see if it'll make it go away. You know, I know it works great on automobiles to get rid of reflections and windshield. As a matter of fact, we have a blog on that. I remember did a blog on that a couple years ago, and I show the cars on Fifth Avenue, the line of Ferraris.
Oh,
and
I remember that blog article too. Do you remember the name of it?
Something about circular polarizers or polarizers.
Would it be polarizer in the title?
It might be, yeah.
Or CPL. So remember, you type in the search, not the search bar, but the actual address bar, the very, very top. Understandphotography.com space polarizer.
Yeah. And that'll show you examples. As I recall, I had pictures of the Ferraris on Fifth, and them with and without it. And then I had pictures I had taken up in the Smokies of a mountain stream coming down with and without. So you'll get a good idea of what a circular polarizer effect does. And again, if you're going to buy one, buy a good one. The thing to do is you can always buy one that fits your largest lens and then get step rings to make it fit the other ones. The only caveat...
Step rings step down? Or...
you would step...
Wouldn't it be the opposite way, where you'd get
I'm trying to
one for
remember.
your...
I always get them...
Wouldn't you get one for your smallest lens, and a step ring would make it fit a bigger lens?
Well, you want the circuit...
I don't know. I don't have a step ring.
You want the polarizer for your largest lens.
Okay.
And then it steps...
down.
I'm trying to remember...
Because if you're getting it for your longest lens, you must get smaller.
I always get it backwards, and I always have to go look. Whether you look at the ring from the viewpoint of the lens, which would mean you're stepping up to it, or from the viewpoint of the polarizer, which means you're stepping down to the lens.
Oh,
I can never remember
and now
which way it is.
A step ring, how would you find that? What would you do a search under? Step ring for polarizer?
Well, just step ring for any filter.
Okay. So what you would want, let's say I have, and if you guys don't know,
We'll stick that in the notes, whether it's a step up or step down, because I always forget.
So what's this called? Your diameter?
Yeah.
Or your radius, or diameter?
It's a diameter.
Okay.
It's a diameter.
So your lens has a diameter, and it's listed on your lens somewhere. So let's say 77 is a very...
The easiest place to find it is on the inside of your lens cap.
Oh.
The inside of your lens cap always says...
If you still have your lens cap.
If you have your lens cap, every lens cap I've ever seen has what size it is on the inside. So that's your...
And it also has it right on the lens
You'll find it somewhere on the lens.
So a very common size is 77 millimeters, right?
For pro
professional
camera.
camera.
A 67 is a common size. A 62 is a common size.
But let's say I buy the one for the 77.
Right.
I've got a polarizer filter that's a 77 size, right? So then I'm going to want a step ring for a 67 for my 67 lens.
Yeah.
So that's the way you... And step rings, how much do they cost, you know?
$10 to $30.
Okay.
The better ones are brass. The cheaper ones are aluminum. The really cheap ones are some identified metal.
So you don't have to buy a bunch of polarizer lenses at $50 to $100 each.
But the
buy
thing
one
there,
good one and then...
But the thing there is now you're not using your lens hood. So you have to be careful that you're not getting reflections in. But that's one reason you want to buy a good quality polarizer, because a good quality polarizer is going to have anti-reflective coatings on it, where they'll be multi-coated, where the cheapest ones won't, and then you're back like with the cheap UV filter. You're doing more harm than good. A good circular polarizer for a 72 millimeter or 77 millimeter lens is going to be around $100 or better.
Okay.
B+W is a good brand. Marumi is a good brand.
How do you spell that?
M-A-R-U-M-I.
Okay.
They're two very good brands. Marumi for a long time was the secret, because they were like 2/3 of the price of the B+Ws, and they were limited availability. So that was like people would buy that, but they got popular, and then they their price
went back up too.
got back up, yeah.
That's interesting. Gosh, photography is expensive, isn't it?
All hobbies are expensive when you get serious about them.
Really?
I think
what about
so.
hiking? Well, I guess so. Then you need the boots and
they get the fancy boots, and they get the super lightweight tent because they're going overnight, and then they got this, that, and
You know, my friend who I talk about a lot, Chris Hopkins, who takes me out in the swamp, he came and he brought me a cooler of ice and everything, and he said, I'm getting you ready to start camping, because I haven't graduated to camping yet. I like the swamping, but sleeping overnight out there, I don't know, doesn't appeal to me.
Well, you get down to the end of the Everglades, you go down to Flamingo in the summer, and you'll look at they have a huge campground down there, and you won't see anybody there but the mosquitoes. Well, in the winter, you can't get in there. Oh. In the summer, it's just nothing. Well, and it's gorgeous because it's right on the tip of the Everglades, so you're right there surrounded by the Gulf.
He went down because they had this huge orchid. I guess it was he loves orchids.
Yeah.
So he got the whole bug suit, and and he said, when you're prepared, it's not so bad, but it was still.
Yeah. We have those bug jackets. They're fantastic.
He won't give me that picture, by the way. We went out for night photography, and the three of us ended up. He it was his fault because he sent me the link and said, look, these bug jackets are on sale. So I sent it out to all my friends, so we all have the exact same bug jacket, same color. So the three of us were out doing night photography. We took a picture, but he took it and he won't give it to me.
Yeah, that was a good jacket too. It's made by Ex Officio, was the brand name. And it's one of the few I've seen. It's good against no-see-ums.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of these bug screens you have for your face or jackets, they're fine for mosquitoes and stuff like that, but the no-see-ums just fly right through them. And I was really skeptical of it until I bought it and actually tried it. And
oh, that's right, you went out to the beach.
I went to Bunch Beach, and Bunch Beach, sometimes you go out there in the morning and you get out of your car and you get back in your car because you just can't stand them, they're so bad. So I'm out there with my friend Mike, and I put the jacket on, and the hood comes down, and it covers your face and everything but your eyes. And I get out of the car, and I'm great. And Mike got out of the car. He had, you know, he had the deed on, and he had this on, and he had one of the regular hoods that you buy on, and they were killing him.
Wow.
And I was just walking around like, you know, that was great.
They have whole outfits too, you know.
Yeah.
We just have the jackets.
Yeah, but it was
our matching jackets.
But they're fantastic if you get one that's good for the no-see-ums, you know.
All right, so let's talk about for our friends in other places. Although, no, this isn't true because this just happened to me. How do I prevent condensation on my lens when I go from a cold place to the warm place? That's right. Right before I went to Italy, I had a job working at a country club. It was a big event, and there were a lot of people who went outside, and it was hot and muggy outside.
Right.
And I walked outside, and whoosh, my lens fogged up.
Okay, I'll give you the technical explanation first.
Okay.
The moisture in the air is condensing on the lens.
Okay.
The temperature at which it condenses is what's called the dew point. You probably heard them on the news or the weather, and they talk about what the dew point is. That's the temperature at which the vapor turns to liquid. Okay, so your lens or your camera is colder than the dew point.
Okay.
So you've got to have your camera or lens warmer than whatever the dew point is.
Okay.
So how do you do that? Well, you don't get it too cold to begin with. Okay, or if you are in some place cold, and you go to someplace warm, you need to put it in a plastic bag or something like that.
What about me who is
up.
working, though, and I need to get out there and take some shots? I don't have time to put them in a plastic bag. I'm working, man. Could I put it in a plastic bag while it's still on the camera?
Yeah. Yeah.
And what would I do? Would I warm it up?
You're trying to get
get a blanket around it or something?
You have to get it warm.
So what I do?
So if you've got sunlight around, you can kind of have it out in the sunlight. You know, the thing is, you got to get the temperature of the lens or camera or whatever
warmer
up above whatever the dew point is.
So what if I just had like a towel in my camera bag? Could I just wrap it in a towel for a few minutes? Would that warm it up enough to go outside?
That may insulate it. That may keep it from getting warm enough. You know,
a towel?
Well, you're thinking of putting it on your body, where you have your body temperature. You're putting a towel around something that's cold. That's not going to really change it. Okay, you need a heat source. You either need sunlight.
What could be a heat source like that?
Well, you need sunlight, or you know, put it near your body. You know, if you have a jacket on, put it under the jacket so it warms up using your body temperature to help warm it up.
Okay.
Get out in the sunlight. I had that happen one of my Cuba trips. I had my camera up in the rack on the bus, and I didn't realize that there was an air conditioning duct right there.
Oh.
And I got off the bus, and boom, you know, it just fogged up.
And it takes a while to recover.
Well, the only way I could do it is I got it out in the sunlight, and I'm holding it out in the sunlight, you know. And that was the only thing I could do. I had no other way to warm it up, and the sunlight would warm it up better than my body. Well, I didn't have anything other than a light shirt. I had a shirt on, like, you know, just a light shirt on, so I couldn't do anything, you know. If you get yourself a battery-powered hairdryer, or you had it, you know, that would be great to do it.
That happened one time when I first started. We did a wedding at the Ritz-Carlton. I was the assistant, and it was so cold inside and so hot and humid outside, and so Kelly gave me, 2 cameras, and he's like, go in the bathroom and blow dry these,
Well, that's if you have a blow dryer, you need a heat source. It's something to warm it up.
And he was just wiping it off, but it was almost useless.
You wipe it off, it's immediately going to condense again. Because the thing's still cold. There's a lot of moisture in the air, so it's just going to keep. That's a fruitless thing. You're just smearing it around.
What about here? I have an idea. Okay, so if I know that I'm working inside a country club, or like at the Ritz, you're working in there, ice cold inside, but then you have to go outside. Maybe put your camera bags outside the door for a few minutes.
Yeah. Get them out there
before you go out. Like obviously you couldn't do that on a bus trip.
No,
but I mean, for me, every time it's happened to me is when I'm working, an event or wedding, something like that.
Keep your camera equipment in the environment that you intend to shoot in is really what it is. And if you're changing environment, then it's an issue.
How long do you think it would take if I was inside ice cold? I want to put my bags outside. 10 minutes? Half hour?
Could be. There again, if you're putting your bags outside, have it open so you're not insulating it. You're trying to get the camera to warm up, so you want to get it
That's
out in the open.
That's scary, leaving your stuff outside too.
I got stuck one time. I was going to a greenhouse, and it was winter down here, so it was 60 degrees, let's say. And I went into the greenhouse, which was like 90, and boom. And I spent a half hour till it was warm. I took it in a plastic bag, but still, it's still until I got to the point where it was warm enough to condense it. And I was putting them out in the sunlight and in the plastic bag, trying to heat them up that way. But that's, talking about the plastic bags, that's a preventative to prevent moisture damage. In other words, you're putting in a plastic bag so the condensation is condensing on the bag and not on your lens or your camera or whatever, okay?
So don't put it in the plastic bag if it's too late.
Yeah.
If you went outside and it's already...
No, the plastic bag, you put it in before you make the change from cold to warm, so when the moisture condenses, it condenses on the bag instead of on your camera equipment. Because remember, it's condensing not just on the outside of the equipment, it's condensing on the inside. Okay, because it's getting in there too. So you're putting in a plastic bag sealed or something, or leaving it in a tightly closed camera bag or something like that. Plastic bag will warm up faster because there's no insulation there. But if you're in a camera bag, most of them are padded, so it's like insulation. It's going to take it longer to warm up.
Okay, all right.
But it's just something that happens, Glasses wearers are going to tell you the same thing. They go from a cold thing and they go in a room, boom, they can't see because their glasses fog up immediately.
What about those anti-fog liquid things that people put on their glasses sometimes? That would probably not be a good idea to put on your lens.
I've never seen any of those things that actually worked. I used to have to wear, where I worked, we wore safety glasses all the time, and we'd go in and out. And we had all these different things that they would supply for the safety. They had the coatings on, and they had the anti-fog stuff and all that. Never found anything that worked. For them, when you got inside, you'd breathe on it. You'd take it out, you'd puff it a little bit because you're using your breath to try and warm up the glass faster. That's what we do, or just stick it under your arm or something like that. But those anti-fog coatings, I never saw any that were worth a darn.
All right, so let's move on. Now, I lost my PowerPoint, so do you have any questions like off the top of your head that people ask you all the time? I'll tell you one thing that people ask me all the time, and I bet they ask you all the time, is what kind of camera should I buy? Now, I actually made an entire video, it's only 3 minutes, don't worry, but it's on the understandphotography.com site. It's like, it says what kind of camera should I buy or something like that. So if you click on that, you can watch the video. But let's talk about that.
Well, before, like anything else, before you buy something, you should identify what your needs are. Because the salesman's going to try and sell you either what is going to make him the most money, or what he thinks you need, or maybe some combination of both. And though chances are they're not going to be what's suitable for you. So first you got to decide what you want. Are you getting into this as a serious hobby? Are you just a casual shooter that wants just to shoot? You know, they're just going to shoot your Christmas and birthdays and stuff like that, or do you have dreams of becoming a semi-pro or a pro?
Or if you're a travel photographer, it's totally different nowadays.
Yeah. So you have to
they're
identify.
targeting travel photographers, so they're getting a lot of new cameras that are geared towards travel photographers.
Yeah. You want to identify what you're going to be shooting, and that's going to point you in the right direction. You also have to be aware of how much weight and bulk you're willing to carry around. You had mentioned before about, you know, getting into lighter equipment. A lot of people these days are going to the micro four thirds format mirrorless cameras because they're smaller and lighter. They're tiny compared to the full-size DSLRs, and they give you an excellent photo, excellent quality picture. So that's a good thing to go to. They're more expensive to get into than the cheapest way to get into pro quality, let's say, very flexible kind of camera is to go with a DSLR, an entry-level DSLR. They're the best bang for the buck right now because the micro four thirds, they don't have a bottom tier. They start with mid-range price and go up from there. Where the more traditional DSLRs, what they call the crop body ones, the Canon Rebels, the Nikon 3300 series, or things like that, or the Sony's was A6000s, I think. They're all on a crop sensor, and they're well, you can get into one of them for, I've seen them $400 for a camera and a lens. And I mean, they get really...
including a cheap lens, but a lens.
Yeah.
And, you can get a Rebel at Costco.
Right, and they're...
But of course now they give you, the problem with Costco, Best Buy, stuff like that is they sell a lot of kits.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you're buying a lot of stuff that you don't really need.
Right.
It might be better to just get the camera and get a better lens than get the camera with the lens that they give you.
You know, if you go to some place like Hunt's, or you go to some place like B&H maybe, and you get one of their salespeople, and they'll give you good advice. Especially, I know the people at Hunt's, they're trained to have repeat customers. So they're going to advise you on the right thing to have because they want you to come back.
Right.
And B&H is the same way.
And Johnson Photo Imaging
Johnson
as well.
Photo Imaging. Well, there again, I was thinking mail order more. Unless, of course, if you're in where Hunt's has their stores in New England, but I'm thinking from a standpoint of a Southwest Florida.
If you just want to get on the phone.
If you want to get on the phone, but certainly the best thing to do.
You know what? We're going to have to quit doing this because phones don't do this anymore.
Yeah, I know.
Do they?
Yeah. And you don't drop a dime anymore either.
I don't even know that one.
Okay, that was how you told on somebody. You dropped a dime. You told on the phone.
Oh, see, that's before my time.
Yeah, it's probably drop a quarter for you. But but you're really better off if you have a local photo store. That's the guy you want to go to.
But like you said, be prepared with what you want to do.
The price. When I say a local photo store, I'm not talking Best Buy. I'm talking a camera store, like Johnson's.
Yeah.
Okay, a JPI. They're there. They're part of your community.
And they're photographers.
They're photographers. Their prices aren't any different because the cameras, all the camera manufacturers, they have a fixed price that they force the dealers to sell it to. So whether you buy it from B&H or you buy it from Amazon or you buy it from the local guy, they all have a fixed minimum price or fixed price they have to sell it at. So chances are it isn't going to save you any money to go to mail order. You go local, you have the experience right there, you have the export people. You got experienced people right in the store. So really, that's your best one to do. Okay. If you don't have that, then you find a mail order dealer, internet dealer that you can trust.
That you can call up on the phone.
That you can call up on the phone and ask questions of.
And Hunt's Photo and Video is a good example.
B&H does that. I don't really have any dealings with Adorama, but I'm pretty sure they do the same thing. Okay, but they're the kind of places you'd want to go to.
Okay.
You know? And avoid anybody who's got honest in his name. I can think of one guy in particular, but just avoid anybody that is honest.
All right, so like a Canon Rebel, that's actually what I recommend people get. A Canon Rebel because
that's the best bang for the buck. It's a nice size. It's not as big as the pro level DSLRs.
It's much lighter.
And it's much lighter.
But it's lighter because?
It's lighter because it's a little smaller because of the crop body sensor. There's also a lot more plastic in it and a lot less metal in it.
You can't beat it up as much as you can a pro level
No, you
camera.
can't use it to drive nails. But
like you can with a pro camera.
But they're solid enough. And the optical quality is good even on these kit lenses. They're pretty good. Their build quality isn't quite as good. There's more plastic in them, and maybe they don't focus quite as fast or whatever, but they're still...
You're talking about the kit lens, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because the lens is where the focus is, right?
Yeah. The kit lenses don't focus as fast as the high quality.
And one of the reasons that I recommend the Canon Rebel is because you can graduate and put professional lenses on that camera.
Yeah. I mean,
maybe start with the kit lens, but then you can buy...
You can get a better quality lens as you go along.
And that can be, if you want to be a professional, that can be your backup camera as you go professional.
Exactly.
Because you should never do anything professional without two cameras.
Or two of anything. Two flashes.
Exactly.
Your lenses have enough crossover so you can get away without one. Things like that. Always have redundancy when you're a pro, because you're expected to deliver.
Now, in Nikon, as you said, the 3300 series, I think the 5000 series.
The 5000 series is
3000 series.
Yeah, they have the 3000 series and they have a 5000 series.
That are their entry level.
They're their entry level, and then they have the 7000 series, which is kind of like the Canon 80D or whatever, 70D, 80D. I guess they're going to have a 90D.
Right.
Step up,
Still crop frame.
Still crop frame.
Now, Canon has a lower end, I guess you would call it, full frame camera, a 6D.
6D. Canon has one, or Nikon has one too.
What is theirs?
750 maybe?
I think it's a 750.
Yeah, I think it's a 750.
So you can get a full frame camera. It's not, I think it's only like $1,800.
Yeah,
just for the body, not,
What you're doing there is, you don't have all the fancy autofocus and all the bells and whistles and all that stuff, with that. You got the excellent quality sensor, you just don't have a lot of the extra stuff.
What do you mean by autofocus?
Well, when you get into 6D, let's say as compared to an 80D. The 6D, the focus choices you have are more like a Rebel than like an 80. In other words,
but you have autofocus.
Oh yeah, you have.
Yeah, I was like, what?
No, you don't have as many autofocus choices. You don't have all the fine tuning and all the rest of it like you would with a semi-pro full frame, or a semi-pro crop body.
But if you're a portrait photographer or event photography, you don't need all that fancy stuff.
You don't need it for doing landscapes either. Landscapes typically don't move.
The only time you need the more sophisticated focusing system is
motion.
Sports,
motion,
birds, wildlife.
Yeah.
That's all I can think of.
Anytime you have motion, then you might want a better...
Now, if somebody is a wildlife or bird photographer or sports photographer, what camera do you recommend for that? And believe it or not, we only have a few minutes.
Really?
Went fast.
Well, that's a long subject, so maybe we better leave that for another one and just stand on something else. Well, for myself, when I'm shooting action photography or birds, let's say, it's all about reach. I need a long enough lens to get it, because usually you're far away. And especially if you're a hobbyist and you don't have credentials to get access to get close. So you need reach. And the easiest way to get reach is not get a full frame camera, is to get an APS-C camera, a crop body camera, because that gives you 1.5 times the reach right there. So your 400 millimeter lens becomes the equivalent of a 600 millimeter lens as far as the reach you have.
So you'll get a crop frame camera, but specifically you say that there are crop frame cameras that have very sophisticated focusing systems, which is what you're going to need.
Yeah.
So what, do you know any off the top of your head?
The Canon 7D Mark II would be the Canon version.
Do you know the Nikon version? I don't.
I think it's the 500. I think it's the 500.
Okay.
D500, I believe, is the same equivalent.
So,
yeah.
So
and they have very advanced autofocus, all the things you would need for high-speed tracking. They usually have very high frames per second. You know, you're getting up 8, 9, 10 frames per second now. Very fast that way. So you get fast frames per second. You have a very clear optical viewfinder, so you can track. You know, you have all the, and they're built like tanks. They're built to pro level.
Okay. Okay. So when you're out there laying on your belly trying to shoot birds.
Right. They'll have some kind of
better weather sealing.
Yeah, and you know, you got to watch that. If you look at the camera teardowns, you go on the sites where they show you the camera teardowns, and you look at what they actually call weather sealing or makes the camera weather resistance, and they have a little tiny piece of foam around it, and then places there are holes, they actually put Scotch tape on internally on the lens.
Really?
Yeah, and that's, quote, makes it weather resistant.
I told you he was an encyclopedia.
So, you know, this kind of stuff, you know, it's weather resistant, but they're not responsible. There's no warranty on it. You know, it's not waterproof.
You still have to be careful.
It's not waterproof.
Okay.
So, you know, you got to watch it.
All right. Is there anything else that you can think of? Any quick questions that people ask you all the time?
Well, I'm just trying to think here. We've talked about filters. To me, people say, what filter should I buy? To me, you buy a circular polarizer. If you're constantly go into nasty environmental conditions where you're going to get salt spray on the lens, you're going to get sand on it, then you might want to buy a UV filter, a clear filter to put over it. But other than that, any filter effect I can duplicate in post-processing, so I don't buy any other filters.
Well, that's not completely true, though. If you want to do the super slow shutter speed stuff, you need to get an ND filter.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking of that. The other thing you might want to have is a couple neutral density filters in different graduations, so you can get a slow shutter speed, to slow your shutter speed down, because you can't duplicate that in post either.
Right.
If you want a slow, blurry, silky water effect on the water,
you're either going to do it in the dark, or you're going to get a filter.
But keep in mind, your circular polarizer is giving you two stops right off the bat.
Get some there.
So you can get a little bit there, and a lot of times you'll find that's enough.
Yeah.
But certainly having a neutral density filter or two would be something. But I don't get involved with a lot of the other filters because it's ezy for me to duplicate that after the fact.
Everything is so easy in Lightroom,
and
actually, or Photoshop. But actually, I do want to give a little commercial because Joe. It was such a nice surprise for me because I went to Italy for a month. I swapped houses with somebody and came back, and he said, I finished another Lightroom class. So the Lightroom class that he put together, it's an online course, and it's all about catalogs, collections, organizing your files, what did you say, clean up your mess.
Clean up your mess. Yeah, a lot of times we do private mentoring, and a lot of times I'm called to somebody's house, and they got pictures all over the place. They got pictures here, they got pictures there. A lot of times that happens, maybe they've converted from Aperture to Lightroom, or they've had things here and they don't have any system and they can't find pictures and everything else. And that's what got me thinking about this. And we had some people also that had taken our basic Lightroom course that I have.
It's called Getting Started with Lightroom.
Getting Started with Lightroom. And they'd taken that, and they were a little more interested in finding out how to work with some collections and folders and things like that. And they want a little more advanced type of information. And
well, one of the specific questions is one of our guests who actually works here, Brian Jansen, said that he takes his catalogs, his Lightroom catalogs, from computer to computer. And somebody said, wow, how do you do that?
And
so Joe addressed it.
Yeah.
So he put together this awesome class. It's the same format that everybody loves, with the very short little videos, right? 2, 3, 5 minutes maybe.
Yeah, it's hard for me to talk just 2 minutes at a time.
Yeah, I know. We blew through this thing. It's like, oh my gosh, we hardly even got through any questions. Anyway, so you watch the short video, you try it at home. You can rewind the video and then go on to the next step. So he builds on it. So it's a really, really good class. And it is on pre-order through October 1st. It's going to be, I should say, not say through September 30th.
Of 2017.
of 2017, and then it will be available on October 1st at full price. So if you pre-order it, you can get it for the super, super cheapo price that I'm not going to say because this podcast is going to be on for a long time on the internet. So check out, you can go on understandphotography.com, but you can go directly to our teaching site, which is onlinephotoworkshops.com/courses. But you can just go to onlinephotoworkshops.com and find it as well. So, so check that out. Our next 4 weeks to proficiency in photography starts October 5th. And in fact, everybody who's in the September class is going to be pushed to October 5th because almost everybody lived in Southwest Florida. So we just haven't been doing the class. We've been in the middle of a hurricane. So October 5th for that. Thank you so much for watching the Understand Photography Show. I forgot what episode this is because I lost my notes. 55, right?
55.
55. So check out our show notes on understandphotography.com. I'm Peggy Farron with Joe Fitzpatrick.
And don't forget to like us down the bottom of the screen. If you're looking at this on YouTube, check like. It helps us a lot.
Thank you so much for watching.